Greetings and welcome to another Educator Innovator webinar. It's January 28th, 2015, and today we'll be getting an inside look at hackathons from a group of high school students in Oakland, California, and their teacher and hackathon mentor, Claire Shorall. I'm your host, Paul O. at the National Writing Project in Berkeley, California. Hackathons, where teams attempt to tackle problems through the use of code over a particular period of time, like a weekend, for instance, has become popular with young programmers. Claire Shorall, a computer science teacher at Castlemont High School in Oakland, has given her students the opportunity not just to learn code, but to make use of what they've learned at hackathons with an aim towards solving issues in their lives and their communities. So today our guests are Ronye, let's see, I'll go from right to left, are Claire Shorall from Castlemont High School, teacher there, Ronye Cooper, and Sandra Vivian-Calderon. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves. So, Claire, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. So hi, my name is Claire Shorall. I'm in my 5th year of teaching at Castlemont High School. I teach AP Computer Science, as Paul told you, but then also an AP Biology course and AP Calculus. I've also taught biology in the past. These are my students. I've been supporting them through their computer science journey now for 2 years. Yeah. It's really incredible work. I'm really excited to share it.
My name is Ronye Cooper. I am a senior here at Castlemont. I've been coding for maybe about a year. I did a Girls Who Code program over the summer, and I'm really into anime.
My name is Sandra. I'm a senior here at Castlemont High School. I started coding about a year ago, I'd say, and I also did Girls Who Code summer immersion program at Square, and I'm really into Harry Potter.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. It's so great to have you here on Educator Innovator, and I have to say, especially, it's great to have the voices of young people. Usually we have adults on, and so it's great to get your perspective. So thanks for being here, because I know it's well past the end of school. Yeah. So for the audience, one thing before we get started, if you're watching this hangout from the Educator Innovator blog, make sure that you jump into the chat that is on the webinar page. We'll be posting links to resources there throughout the webinar. Terrific. So just getting started, I think it would be great if you all could talk a little bit about what exactly a hackathon is. I don't know that everyone in our audience really understands what a hackathon means.
Well, what we say is a hackathon is you have a group of people and you get together with the team, people who have no knowledge of computer science and some who do have knowledge, and you get together and you build something that will help solve a problem.
You then compete for prizes, and yeah, you get to eat a lot of food, you get to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you get to also play with hardware, and it's like something that you don't have the chance to do in the classroom.
It's the kind of a concept of putting like a whole project or like a whole semester's worth of work into one weekend. There's a certain intensity to hackathons. Sometimes hackathons have themes. So we recently went to a public safety hack where everybody was sort of working on some sort of application or device that would really address public safety concerns. And sometimes the theme is nebulous. It's whatever you want to create. But yeah, they're sprints. They're total sprints, and they tend to take place over the course of a weekend. And Ronnie mentioned that you can go with knowledge or without knowledge. People within industry do these as well, so it's not just like a high school or young programmer thing. It's an industry-wide event. We've used them really as a platform to take what we've learned in class and kind of apply like our knowledge to issues that we see within the community. So they're fun. They're exhausting.
And are they exhausting because they essentially run nonstop from the beginning of the weekend to the end?
Some do. Me and Sandra just participated in an overnight hackathon for the weekend, and he's up all night coding, and it was very exhausting. Sometimes you code, you go home, you come back, but this one was just continuous.
Even when you go home, it's not really a break. You still think about it. We travel back together the next day, and it's like, what did you do last night? Yeah. It's fun because there's a start and a finish line.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're is probably even a very much a social component to what's going on, both within your team and I would imagine with the other people who are there at hackathons.
I guess socially, you get to meet a lot of different people. People from all over the country came to the hackathon we were just at, and it's really cool to see other people from other countries getting into computer science. It's not just a United States thing; it's like a national thing. So it was interesting, and it was a great insight to see what people were thinking.
Well, that's amazing. And so, so I'm actually wondering if do you see other people, other students your age at hackathons?
It depends on what type of hackathon. There's all high school hackathons, so all young people, and then there's adult hackathons. And adult hackathons usually you can really go. So I could say, I don't know, sometimes, sometimes.
And when you go to the adult hackathons, are you often the only students there, or the only young people there?
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying this like they're generally my. We go to that.
Yes.
Yeah. And what does that feel like? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Claire.
I was going to say those are some of the ones where we've been more successful. I would like to say that there's a certain creativity in youth.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'd like to hear more. So could you say more about that? Like why do you think it is that when you're at the hackathons, mainly with adults, that you're the ones who are most successful?
We like to hear from youth, I guess. Everybody wants to hear from a youth's perspective. Like, you have a bunch of adults that kind of think the same, so like young people kind of have a different mindset, and we're living in a different generation now. So it's like, I don't know, there's something about us that they like.
You can add to this, Sandra, but I also think one of the interesting points of a hackathon is not necessarily about the product that you create as much as about the idea generation. Like, yes, they want a working prototype, but it's not really about how polished you get. So even if somebody has like way more skills, like as long as we can get whatever we're working on like up and off the ground, then we're competing on a level playing field. So it really is about ideas. I think that's how we've been rewarded in the past.
That's really fascinating. That's really, really interesting. And so what for you does it feel like to oh, actually, I realized I had one other question. So it seemed to me, when I talked to Claire about the hackathon work that you all are doing, it struck me both that perhaps you would be like the youngest people at a hackathon, and I wondered too, there's been a lot in the news about who's represented in the industry, in the programming industry. And so do you feel like that you represent, or are there many people of color at hackathons? Do you represent a small group of people because of that fact too?
I think we represent the minority, especially because we're girls and we're of color. So like when you go to a hackathon, it's mainly men, and it could be really intimidating because they've had more experience or something. And then I also think that gives us an advantage because we think differently and we've been through situations they haven't been through. So that affects, yeah.
What's the breakdown?
Pretty much. The breakdown of this weekend was mostly white males and not that many women or women of color, or people of color in general, but pretty much the breakdown.
It was like 300, right?
It was like 400 kids.
It was 400 something.
Yeah, 400 kids. How many girls did you see that looked like you?
2.
Not one.
I saw 2 girls that looked like me.
I didn't see any girls like me.
That's amazing. That's really incredible. And so does that, well, so I guess, in general, a question that I have for you is, what does it feel like to participate in a hackathon? And I think it's both the actions that you're taking, but then, this kind of setting that you find yourselves in and who you're surrounded by.
Well, I think it's kind of like intimidating at first, it feels like you think everybody knows more than you do, but at the end of the day, you just like bring out your ideas, and so it's less intimidating at the end when finally get to like show your product and show that you actually know something. And it's kind of like, oh, if you beat them, you're like, yeah, I know more than them, and like it's kind of rewarding in a way. But
And how about you, Sandra?
I don't really have anything to add, but it is really intimidating at first. Like, for example, I'm so tiny because I felt like I couldn't get any fancy programs to like actually compile, but it worked and we were pretty proud of that because it's like a new language and we've never had experience with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, so it may be intimidating, but you go back again and again, right? So so there must be something about it that you really enjoy. What is it about hackathons that you really enjoy?
The fact that there are people like you who like to program. Like when you go out in the streets, you don't really see programmers, especially here in Oakland. So once you go over there, like, oh, these people are like me. They went through the same things I went through. They saw their program crash thousands of times, and they're still here.
Yeah.
And did you have anything that you wanted to add, Ronnie?
Pretty much what Sandra said, and also like I guess the atmosphere is it's like, I don't know, it's addicting in a way. The environment is pretty cool. You get to see all these different places and meet and just get to know their experiences. Also, because sometimes we don't get that chance to get out of Oakland if hackathons are in Oakland, and just go out and find people who want to do the same things you want to do.
That's great. Well, I'm wondering, Claire. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would also add for them, like maybe they don't realize this in themselves, but I tend to show up like if it's a high school hackathon, like an hour or two before they're about to like actually go and share their work, and there's always like an immense amount of pride. And I think a lot of the projects that students make are, I mean, they're things that like actually affect daily life. And we've been talking about the idea, but the ideas, they're not necessarily like novel or off the wall. It's that like here's a real issue and here's a real solvable like problem that I have. Like let's try to implement a solution. And so what I see from them, like, you know, if I can try to create urgency in a classroom, but it's just not the same as like, oh my gosh, we're actually going to share what we created. It actually needs to happen in the next 20 minutes, and we have to get this down, and we only have a minute and a half to share it, and like, what's the biggest bang for the buck? Like, let's just go. It's fun.
It's like adrenaline.
Yeah.
But like in a whole new level. It's not like you're doing something dangerous. It's just, oh man, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, and that's right, and that's a part that, or that's a piece that perhaps the audience is not aware of. So at the end of the hackathon, essentially, all the teams get up and they share what they've created, right? And you show off what it is that you've created. And then isn't there often a judging panel that perhaps asks you questions? And so you also, not only are you hacking, but you have to have these skills to be able to show what it is that you've made and essentially give the reasons why you made the decisions you did. Is that right?
Yeah.
They've gotten a lot better at pitching too, like over time. And then like Sandra, for example, does build, which is like an entrepreneurial thing, and I can like see some of those skills come in. And Ronnie's just like always super engaging. We like hand her the microphone. Just talk about our idea.
I just talk a lot sometimes.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, and so I'm wondering, Claire, if you could talk a little bit about how you even got involved in hacking and hackathons, and how you decided to get your students involved in hackathons.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess if you go back, not last summer, but the summer before, someone basically came to Oakland Unified and was like, we're holding this program at Stanford called Girl Code, and we need 5 students from Oakland to fill these spots, and do you know any students who could possibly take them? And this would be like kind of went through central office people, and a little birdie told me, and I was like, I got all 5. I want all 5. And a group of 5 girls down to Stanford, and they came back really energized, and they also did incredibly well while they were there. And so I kind of hosted like a AP computer science class last year. I was basically just proctoring it. I wasn't really helping them because my skills were relatively limited at that point. But it was enough to sort of see like, wow, this is really engaging work for kids. And then I was getting so I had Ronye and Sandra and like a lot of the people who are in my APCS class now as sophomores in a biology course. So I knew like that they were interested in problem solving. I knew that they were critical thinkers. And I was like, here are some other outlets within the Bay to just learn. So like Sandra did Code Now, Ronye was working on Code Academy. They both applied to Girls Who Code. So like there was some momentum. But last November, because of those 5 girls were doing APCS, it kind of came to us that there was going to be a hackathon hosted by the Level Playing Field Institute. And so we sent 3 different teams. You guys were on one. Yeah. So we sent like 15 kids from Castlemont, and our first hackathon ever. It was actually really light as far as programming goes, because at that point we didn't. It was like basically wireframing, which is just kind of like putting your ideas up. It wasn't so technical. But one of our teams won, and it was a boon for the program, because all of a sudden people were sort of talking like, oh, there's kids from Castlemont who are interested in tech. Their project was really like a fascinating idea. It was called Safe Block, and basically they were creating an app to crowdsource safety information for kids walking home from school. So like I hear a gunshot while I'm walking home, then I like post that like I heard it when I was on the corner of like 90th and Birch, and then like I get an alert if my GPS signal is within that area or something. So the problem was salient to the students at the time. They were getting a lot of positive feedback about their implementation. It was really like well thought out, and that sort of just kind of like put the momentum enough for me to be able to say like, go spend your weekends in San Francisco learning Ruby. Like spend weeks of your summer at. So Ronye was at Twitter and Sandra was at Square. And these were just like 2 representative students. Like there are a lot of other narratives on how people got into this. I'm currently in a program called TEALS, which is a partnership through Microsoft. And so I have teacher volunteers come into my classroom to actually teach the AP Computer Science course. And then I'm sort of poised as a student in the class. So we have a big homework assignment tonight. But I'm learning I'm learning the content such that I can teach it, and then also helping facilitate the volunteers actually teaching the course as well. So it's kind of like having 4 student teachers / I have to get good at Java. But I think in much of the ways that I found it super engaging, like it have been mirrored in kids. It's a different way of thinking. Correction. It's like really logical. And it pushes you to think in ways that I think can apply themselves in other disciplines. I kind of wish all kids took computer science, just because it bolsters like attention to precision, this like letting your program crash 1,000 times and still being resilient about it at the end. Yeah, so it's like Ronye used the word addictive. I can totally, like that resonates with me. It's been really fun, and it's been like the hackathons are just a way, I think, to sort of take things out of the classroom and make things less dry, and really apply what we know. But computer science in general, I think, has become kind of a movement here.
And so I think you began to touch on this, Claire, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more and expand on this idea of why you think this is important at all, this idea of your young people really engaging in understanding computer science and being able to code, and then being able to engage in practical applications of their coding knowledge at hackathons.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important. I'll kind of start broadly. Like, I think it's important for everyone. So, like, through my work in advocating for democracy in the digital age, like, this is a reality for us. Technology is a reality, and coding is a literacy. Being able to program is a way of thinking. I think probably everyone would benefit from learning some level of algorithmic thinking. But like, we're in the Bay, right? And every morning I drive down this massive hill and I look like across the Bay to San Francisco, which is just this beautiful skyline of steel and glass and prosperity, and we can see it, and we should be not just seeing it, we should be touching it, we should be creating it, we should be leading it. And when I say we, I really mean them. But I think it's irresponsible here in the Bay not to expose all students to computer science because it's such a driver of the local economy. And it's also, it's not just like the lucrativeness of like potential job earnings. Like that, it's not even just that. It's that like it's empowering. Like you can create solutions to problems in a way that I think like engineering also is. In a way that I think law could be, right? Like there's all these ways in which like kids can affect their world, but this is just one of them, and it's, to me, in the Bay, like one of the easiest ways that you can go about affecting your world because it's all here. So yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily care if they go work for Google or Yahoo or Facebook or like, right? Like they can go work for one of those, or they can go do, like Ronye is really into psychology, right? Like, but regardless, like having those skills, like that will help her scale. And so like if I don't give kids the opportunity to learn these sort of things, not only is it a disservice to them, it's like a disservice to this greater community. It's a disservice to tech. Sandra touched on this, but like their ideas matter and they're different. So yeah, that's kind of why I think it matters. I probably could go on about this, but
and you should, and I think that was really well said. And I think the other piece to this, and I'd be curious to hear what Ronye and Sandra's reactions are to what you've said. I would just add that it seems to me like regardless of the field that you go into, it seems like you have now been empowered with this knowledge that you can create in this digital world in which so often we're confronted with this choice of consuming so much digital information and these digital tools that are provided to us that seem for many people mysterious. You know, you all are creators of this world, and you have agency. You know, in this coding universe, in this sort of digital environment in which we live, and you know, that seems empowering to me. But I'm wondering if you two have responses to what Claire described as why she thinks this is important.
Well, for me, it's important because I know that my ideas can actually get somewhere, and I'm not just doing this because it's fun or because it's interesting. It's like something I can apply every day to, and I know that keeping in mind that one day I'll become a CEO, hopefully, it's like keeps motivating me. Like, oh yeah, resiliency and going out of the box, and like also not just working by yourself. Like you also have to work as a team because otherwise you don't get anything done. So you have to reach out, and yeah.
Excuse me. Well, not in response to it, I like everything she said was just like correct and awesome. But also that, I guess it's a way like it has helped me think, like she said, outside the box. Like think where I would normally think. Like think ahead. Think for the future, and just like really like it can help with anything I want to do in life. So I want to study psychology or neurology. So thinking that that's gonna help me, like computer science is gonna help me understand that. I think it's gonna help me really critically think about my future and everybody else's, and how to really put that together.
Great, thanks for those responses. I had a couple of more questions about hackathons. One is, what is this thing that is in front of you that's on this table? Can you explain? Can you tell us what this is?
We won't break it. You want to explain it? I think, who did the pitch for this one?
Oh, wait, you did. Wait, did I? I demonstrated. But somebody else was talking. So basically, this is like a checker. Like a student, I don't know what the pitch was, but like essentially you're a teacher and you want your students to evaluate how they did on a certain lesson or certain, like, teaching them something and how they like, took it. So it's like a grader. So like you just taught a lesson, you want students to know like how they did or what they thought about it. And so you would like press a button and your students would grade it, and then they would send it to you, and you can match the students that understood it and the students that didn't really understand it. They put them together so that they can like have that collaborative. It's like a match. I don't know. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's a student response system.
Yeah.
Actually, so this was really interesting. I was out with somebody recently who was talking about like what their work was in ed tech, and they were saying something about like really leveraging pair-to-pair or like peer-to-peer learning. And in pairs, and they're like, yeah, I just really wish I knew like which students got it and which students didn't, so I could really like leverage this in the classroom. It's like, hey, wait, we did that.
Right, exactly. That's excellent.
Yeah. So this was a product that we made for using Arduino. So these like microcontroller chips.
Yep.
And a student who's not with us right now is particularly good at wiring these things. Mm-hmm. She's a beast. Yeah, but she did most of the wiring, and then we did a lot of the coding. But yeah, so we made these student response systems for this was for an all women's hackathon. So I was actually on the team because it was for adults. And we won runner-up in that event for most likely to go to market.
Really? That's amazing.
So maybe we should be selling this.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so how did you all learn to code in Arduino? Is that something that you did you teach yourselves? How did that happen?
Well, so it's a processing or C derivative. Yeah. It was interesting. So like, I think all teachers probably want this in their classroom, where like you have to learn things by virtue of like, I just need it, so I need to learn it. And it was pretty funny because we like knew what we wanted. We call this like pseudocode. So like we knew that like we wanted, if this Arduino rated themselves an 8 and this Arduino rated themselves a 3, and like there was a max difference between those two, and this one was like a 6 or something, like we knew that we wanted to pair these two. And so that was like when I first started figuring out arrays, because I was like, I want to hold all the values together, and then I want to compare like which one's the highest, which one's the lowest, and then I want to remove those values. And so like basically we learned Google's really helpful. You like, yeah.
Really help us.
Yeah, mentors and stuff too, yeah. So, but we like kind of just started to hack away at like, okay, let me store the values. Let me figure out which one's high. Cool. Let me figure out which one's low and cool. Let me figure out how to remove those and make a new array. Like, it really, we were ahead of our time on that one. Yeah.
Nice.
And it was my first time using Arduinos. Like during the summer, my final project for Girls Who Code, it was a 4x4x4 LED light cube, which we programmed to the beat of any song. So we used Arduino, and it was a whole new concept, but it seemed really familiar because I've used it before.
Yeah, I definitely like leverage certain kids like have areas of expertise, which is cool. Like Laura's our hardware person. Like Sandra knows a lot about hardware as well. Like some kids are really, really strong programmers. Yeah, it's cool. Like it's definitely a team.
That's great. And speaking of which, I wonder for you, Ronye and Sandra, what is it like to have Claire, next to you and positioning herself as a learner as well? Because it sounds like the way that you've described this, Claire, is that it's not like you came into this as like a programming expert, with like your C++ certificate, right? It sounds like you're learning right alongside them. And what is that like for you two?
So having my teacher as a student was like, oh no, like she's pretty smart, she's sharp in computer science, and it's just like it's kind of intimidating, but you're like, I can be here sooner or later, so kind of motivation. You're just like, I want to get past her level.
And to me, it's like having a goddess right next to me, because she's really smart, and if you can't figure something out, like she'll try and try and try. Well, sometimes we eat, sometimes we Google, but she's like she's learning at the same time as us, so I don't feel so behind because I feel like I could get this any minute by just following her example.
And it kind of makes you feel good when she doesn't understand something, but you totally get it. You're just like, yes, like she doesn't understand.
And I'm like, please help me.
Yeah, exactly. So this notion of expertise is really shared, right? This idea of who is or who can be the expert.
Yeah, and it makes like sometimes like when you're teaching, you ask questions that are I don't want to say insecure, like you're leading kids down a path like to discover something, right? Like it's the point of questioning. But my questions in computer science are generally like very genuine. Don't get like I need you to like walk me through this. And sometimes kids like kind of have that posture of like I don't believe you, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm serious. Like please, like break down your thinking for me. Like I need to know what's up.
And so Claire, what was that like for you to put yourself in that position of being a learner alongside your students in you know that sort of absolute a way?
I kind of wish every class was like that. Oh, it was interesting. Like the first day, the volunteers kind of like they call me Claire in the class, and I basically like put myself on the seating chart. Yeah, it's way cooler. I really actually wish that all teaching was sort of poised as like collective understanding. It's also really interesting too, and I'm sure that they're not going to love that I say this, but it's like I have a lot of built-up study skills and, you know, like a college degree, like that level of experience. And sometimes when something's really hard and they're like, I just don't get it, they're like, well, what? You just got it, you know, whatever. And I'm like, no, I just got it because I did like X, Y, and Z things. Like, and I'm kind of hoping that some of that. Actually, I'm not even hoping. I can see some of that like work ethic, or at least like modeling of how to grapple with tough concepts. Like, hopefully, gets passed along. It's fun. It's I probably don't need a fourth prep. But I would be totally down to do that if it was possible.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just as an aside, I don't know if this will matter to any of you, but one of the things, so at this site where this webinar is happening, this Educator Innovator site, one of the things that really undergirds this space is this learning framework, these design principles called connected learning. And some of the main ideas are this notion that we're all learners, and if we could position ourselves in that way, then we would be able to learn from our peers. We would also be able to learn from mentors. And another main element of this connected learning framework is the ability to actually create, to produce things. And so I feel like all the things that you're describing, from the way in which, Claire, you're sitting alongside your students to interacting with these mentors who come into your classroom, to then actually building things for a purpose. It's like it's like you're like living, breathing examples of this learning framework that we hope will be the way that schools can become. Essentially, I feel like you're the model for what we would hope classrooms could look like and schools could look like. So speaking of which, with regard to schools and classrooms, I'm wondering, and I haven't been involved or engaged in, work in the Oakland schools for a really long time. It's been a few years as part of this EDA project, but I have to say, this is the first time that I've come across a computer science program in the Oakland high schools, and I'm wondering, is this computer science program unique, the one that exists at Castlemont?
I can speak. I mean, there's a program at Oakland Tech. I know that there's like some computer science pathway classes at Skyline. There's actually no central point within the district right now to sort of meet up and talk as computer science teachers. So whatever is happening, it's disparate. I know there's work done at Roosevelt Middle School. There may be teachers who are taking on like robotics or app creation or whatever. But right now, we're not a community of educators yet. I don't know. Do you know other students who study CS?
That don't live in Oakland.
Yeah. Yeah. I think within the context of the Deep East, yeah, it's
pretty unique in this area.
And so when you say Deep East, could you explain to people who are not familiar with Oakland what you mean?
Well, in Oakland we have like these parts. You have like the hills, and then the flatlands, and there's just like in East Oakland there's just a part where the flatlands is just the Deep East. Like there's an area of a community and
Low-income
communities, communities of color. Deep East, that's what it says.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. And so that's really interesting, and that this is potentially unique in East Oakland, and I would think that in East Oakland, I mean, I know that there's Claire is participating in this Educating for Democracy in the Digital Age, and throughout Oakland there are a lot of community issues that we're all trying to deal with, and I wonder, Claire has referenced this and touched upon it. But what are some of the issues that you personally are trying to tackle through your programming? And then I'm wondering if there are other examples as well from some of the students who are not represented here in the webinar.
Well, recently we just lost our music teacher. So music programs is important to us. We're both passionate about music, and that was the thing. Like we want kids to be able to have music in their lives, like as an outlet. But so we made an app about music, about learning music skills, and also police brutality and what has been happening.
That's a separate app.
Separate app.
There's music.
And then other issues that we've seen, like issues in Ferguson, and where we've seen police brutality across the country. We made an app called Cop Watch for Oakland specifically. So like
it was like a Yelp for police officers.
Yelp for cops.
Wow.
So you could rate your experience, like their ethnicity versus yours, if they asked you questions, basically your interaction, good, positive. Like we don't want to focus on just the negative, but also on the positive that is actually helping like the community, especially here in Oakland. So yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, that was a cool project too, because we really need to finish it. But the idea behind it would be that like the information that people provide would be stored in an API, which could then be used by the Oakland Police Department for them to do like an internal evaluation of whether or not their cops are actually meeting community policing norms and standards in which they have placed like out there. So that project, I think, holds particular potential.
Yes.
If we ever sit down and just like finish it, but
that's incredible. And so with actually, that's a question that I did have too. What happens to some of these products that you create at the hackathons or these apps? So for instance, would it be possible to download the music app that you just described, Ronye?
Is that live online?
No.
It was HTML and CSS, so it was only for our view, but I'm pretty sure that if we included like an API where we could actually turn that into a mobile app, then we could actually download it to an Android, to an iPhone, or any kind of.
Like the Cop Watch, for example, I think is interesting because so basically like there are one or two developers, actually one of whom is like a woman of color who like is just like a really great inspiration for all of us. Hi, Daphne. Yeah, anyway, so like basically she wants to take a week or two or at some point and just like build it out. With like Ronye was learning SQL from her, like I was trying to integrate this API with another student. Like these words might not mean much to you, but essentially we just need to find like a week or two to like sit down and actually build things out. Like that's the drawback of a hackathon, is that it's just so fast and it's really just about getting something that works well enough to pitch. But it's not about creation. But with that one in particular, like a lot of people came up to us afterwards and they're like, that idea is hot. Like you need to pursue it. You need to go for it. So yeah, I'm like currently in the process of brainstorming what does the end of like after AP test time look like, and trying to utilize that in a way that's.
We could totally do that, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, so it almost sounds like the hackathons are really just like you create lots of rough drafts. I mean, to equate this with, say for instance, writing, it's like you're just, you're trying to get a rough draft to a certain point, but you may not have like the thing that you want to publish, and you might have then ultimately like a bunch of rough drafts with a lot of good ideas, and then, what is the thing that you choose to maybe take to that final step?
Yeah. And it's a rough draft with like plenty of feedback. Like
oh, cool.
Like a lot of feedback.
Yeah, that's nice. That's awesome. Well, so I'm also wondering, and I think you both touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering about. So it sounds like what you do is like pretty unique, not just in Oakland, but definitely at Castlemont. So like, what do your friends think about coding? What do they think? Those who are not involved in the APCS class, what do they think about coding? What do they think about your interests in programming?
Well, they looked at me like if I was a weirdo. When I would talk about like, oh my gosh, look, we need to create a variable here, and then a for loop, and then they would look at me like, I don't know what you're saying, and I don't want to hear about it because I don't understand it. And then other people are like, oh, that's cool. And then there are some that are like, you're such a weirdo. Like, why would you spend your weekend doing work? It's the time to relax. And why are you texting at 4 a.m.? Aren't you asleep? Like, no, it's a hackathon, no sleep. So, I'm falling all night.
Like I get the same reactions as Sandra. I'm just a weirdo, and they're just like, you're just such a nerd, which I am. But I think around that is like you want to tell people about it because you want everybody to do this, so you guys can make money and like all this, and like people are just like, I don't know, this is too much. Like,
but tell them about the hour of code.
So we did an hour of code here at Castle where we had each grade level do a program. They played games, they learned Python or JavaScript. And I think it connected with some kids because we had a survey afterwards, and it's just like we want more kids to get interested in it, so we want them to do more programs. And
like basic computer science is really abstract, but once they do it, it's like, oh, this is cool, I like it. But then they don't know how to actually learn computer science if it isn't through school. So that's why we did that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, so it's kind of like this dilemma of trying to spread the word, but then there not necessarily being the resources that would allow kids to take that next step, like you all have been able to do.
Yeah. We could get every girl in the Girls Who Code program. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Well, I think I think what you've described is a challenge that we educators have to try and tackle and try to figure out. So I appreciate that perspective. And I'm wondering what you would say to someone. Well, there are a couple of things. So I can imagine that many people would say, I can't code. Particularly if you are someone from a non-dominant group and you don't see people like yourselves who are coders. I heard a story once about a kid in Chicago whose teacher was trying to get her to code, and she essentially said, it's like my people don't code. Like I don't. And really it was because she didn't see people like herself who were put forward as programmers, even in like the Hour of Code videos, for instance. So what would you say to someone who said to you, "I can't code"?
I did it. I sat there for hours on end. Like it's possible. You can do it. Like you're just like everyone else. You have that mentality. You're capable of it, and like you can do anything with it. So I don't know. Just try to make them feel like they're awesome and they can just do anything.
Yeah, like you said, anything that you want to pursue in life, like there's some kind of technology in that. Like you could be a journalist and they'll hire computer programmers for anything. And it's like, they're capable of it. Just because they don't look like the other person doesn't mean that they're smart. that the other person are smarter.
Be the first person to do that. Like, if you don't see people of color or people like you in it, you be that person to be like an inspiration to others who thought the same way.
Yeah. It's like if you're up there, then you can be their inspiration, and just knowing that your inspiration came from someone just like you, but like even though they weren't famous, like they still motivated you enough. And now to see that you're their motivation, it's like really meaningful. Yeah.
Great. And do you have anything you'd like to add, Claire, to that?
Like I feel really indebted to a lot of organizations in the Bay, but I'm sure that they exist nationally as well, that do really good work to kind of inspire students and to address, for example, the gender gap, to address students of color in programming roles. Like I'm really indebted to those organizations because kind of what I think Sandra said, like once kids see it, like they get excited about it, but I sometimes feel like seeing it in the context of a classroom is less exciting than seeing it in the context of like industry or like just the more fun uses of technology than tax-heavy stuff that we have to learn in order to become like better programmers.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. I'm also wondering about this term hacking, because there's often such negative connotations to hacking, particularly in the news. You know, it's like North Korea has hacked into Sony studios, and so I'm wondering as well what you might say to someone who was to say to you in response to what you do. Well, I'm not a hacker.
It's a superpower.
It's fantastic.
I'm not gonna break into your Facebook, so you can just like, I'm not that kind of hacker. Like I make things, I don't like break into them and destroy them, but you know, I'm the good person in this situation.
Yeah, and so maybe it's about what the definition of hacking is. What does hacking mean to you?
Hacking means that I tried for 2 hours to get one line of code to print out. I'm like sometimes I actually feel myself, I'm like, the truest sense of the word hacking to me is when like I didn't really properly think through a problem, or I like skipped the step of writing pseudocode. I mean, I guess sort of like kids not writing a rough draft before they're going for a final essay, and then then you're like expending way too much time and energy because you're like not going down a path that makes sense. Like that's when I feel like I'm a hacker. When I'm like, this doesn't. I'm just typing. I'm just typing and like I'm pressing a button and seeing what happens. Like this is not efficient or thoughtful. Like yeah, that's my hacker moment.
I think what it means to be a hacker is like really understanding what you're learning and then like being able to apply it like as quickly as possible, like just really getting it down, and then actually being able to tell someone about it and to like teach you, like if like the point of being a hacker is like for me is like when you learn it good enough that you can teach it to somebody else and you can just program it, like just build.
That's awesome.
You're at a hackathon, so you're considered a hacker by default. So pretty much, to me, it means that you just spend time working on something that might be difficult for you for hours and hours until you actually get it done. Like until you have that breakthrough, like if you were hacking into someone's Facebook. It's like a breakthrough in the code. It's like, oh my God, yes, this works. Like, let it.
But we don't want to be on your Facebook page.
Right. Cool. So that's.
Yeah.
So it's like equating hacking and being a hacker with notions of resilience. Sounds like. That's really fascinating. I've never heard anyone explain hacking in that way, so I appreciate that. So I'm just wondering what you both have talked a little bit about this, and Claire, you should also jump in with this question too. But I'm just wondering, where do you see yourself taking these skills? Where do you want to go with these programming and coding skills?
Well, I hopefully want to. Well, I hopefully become the CEO I want to be. But until then, like, it could be applied to anything. And if I change my mind, like, coding is everywhere. So it's a really useful superpower, like I said.
And I'm wondering actually, before the Ronnie, you and Claire talk, I'm curious, how did this play out when during your internships, for instance? Like, how did this play out when you were at Square?
Well,
she's in love with Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, and how did you get the internships? How did this all come about too?
I applied to Girls Who Code, and then they just placed me at a random company here in the Bay Area. So I didn't really, well, I started my own business in ninth grade, and I ran it all the way to 11th grade. And so I didn't really see myself as a CEO, even though I was the CEO. And like once I got to Square, I was like, I want to be a CEO. Like I want to start my business. I want to tell people what to do and like get to know them on a personal level. They work for me, but like we're still a team, and like we can actually get something done that'll impact the whole world. And yeah.
Cool. So, and how about you, Ronnie? What are you hoping to do with your coding skills?
Well, I'm hoping to go to college with them, but not necessarily major in computer science, but connect it to what I actually want to do in life. I want to major in psychology, neurology, kind of like connect the two. Like, how can I code something like a program related to psychology or something like that? Something I could use in my daily life. And I think for me, coding is gonna be like a hobby on the weekend.
We're gonna be like Shorall.
We're just
out of me on how I spend my time.
And if I don't become a CEO, like I'll become a teacher because I certainly want other people to know how awesome computer science is.
That's amazing. Well, so Claire, how about you take the last word? Anything else that you'd like to share? Would you like to talk about where you're hoping to take coding, or is there something else that you'd like to just close out the webinar on?
Well, I love having these two. I kind of wish I had like risers behind me with all the other kids. This year it was really powerful. 9 out of the 14 seniors in the AP CS class declared CS as either a major or double major that they were interested in majoring in college. So it definitely hooks kids in. There's a lot of potential with it. I love that Ronnie says like this is gonna be something that she'll do on the weekend, because I think that's also like I don't want to preclude kids who like see it as just like a vehicle for happiness or for hobby, and not necessarily that they want to go and have offices on Market with really delicious. By the way, the cafeteria's ruined these two. At least school lunch will never.
School will never be the same.
I will never have the same cookies I had at Square, and the same
soup,
oh my God.
the lamb.
See, like the lamb.
The lamb.
But yeah, I think every kid deserves that opportunity, and for me, it actually I love coding, and I'll probably continue to teach the class, but it also pushes me to think like, what are the most powerful experiences for kids, and how can I facilitate those happening? So whether it be like continuing down this computer science pathway, or thinking about how to integrate engineering and math and science in a way that like really hooks kids in, or like whatever it is, I'm kind of in this problem solving space, and I want to continue to think about just like, how do you do things that are engaging enough that like when you say, hey, I would really love for you to come share your experience and talk about coding, you have people who are like, yeah, absolutely, like it's great. I'll do that,
Like even if I'm sick right now, I can barely talk. Like I'm talking about this, and it shows like how really passionate I am.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever need somebody, just call me.
Yeah, so I guess that would be my final word. Like, you can be a really excellent classroom teacher, and like I see them all the time, and kids are really engaged during that hour. But just thinking about how to make it such that like kids want you to pick them up at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning because they're like really excited to do whatever you're really excited about as well. in a way that like creates something that's actually meaningful for like the broader group. Yeah, that's like it's an interesting challenge, and it's something that I kind of hope everybody leaves us thinking about, like, what is like what does academic passion look like when it's so pervasive that it sort of like takes over the way kids think and like how they want to change the world.
And it seems to me as well bleeds out of the school environment, so that you're taking kids to hackathons that I'm assuming occur all over the Bay Area, and they're seeing these connections with mentors and opportunities that exist totally outside the classroom, which I think is amazing, and I'm sure really elevates potentially the level of excitement.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, this is wonderful. What an amazing conversation this was. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and tacking this on to the end. Thank you so much for sharing with us and helping us understand better hackathons and the place of teenagers in hackathons. So I'm just going to close out by saying that if anyone who's been listening to this great conversation is interested in learning more about connected learning, make sure to check out the Connected Learning Alliance site at clalliance.org, where there are tremendous testimonials from practitioners and really informative multimedia pieces. And if you'd like to keep abreast of future opportunities from Educator Innovator and partners like the one we heard about today, which is the Educating for Democracy in the Digital Age project, sign up for the monthly newsletter at educatorinnovator.org. You can also follow Educator Innovator on Twitter at @innovates_ed. So thank you to Sandra, Ronnie, and Claire. It was great talking with you today, and I can't wait till we have another conversation and you show me these finished products.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.